welcome back to my channel. My name is Tina and today we're going to do a bit of a behind the scenes of my makeup and murder series. This video is going to be going up immediately after I film it because I didn't get it filmed. I'm feeling like crap today. It took me like 2 hours just to do this look because every time I tried to do my makeup I was getting super sick and my head has been pounding and just the lights in here are driving me nuts. Alright, so for those of you who don't know, I don't know how you would know, but I have a series called Makeup and Murder where I do my makeup in a get ready with me style video while I talk about a true crime murder. Always been female serial killers or killers of some sort. Their crimes are interesting to me. Most of them pre-1940s. I've done a couple more recent ones, but most of them are older. I put out all over the place that I needed some questions for my makeup and murder video. I did get some responses back, not as many as I was hoping. Come on people, follow me on Facebook. One of the first questions is from Emily and she asks, I'd love to know how you research credible sources. How long have you had an interest in true crime? If you have any true crime authors or blogs you enjoy, how far is too far for fandom in your opinion? Example, would you ever converse with a convicted killer? This is an interesting question. I have a really interesting family. When I decided that I was going to go into criminal justice and criminology and things like that to study, it was a huge problem for a bunch of my family. They're not on the right side of the law, and my husband, who is a law enforcement officer, has never met. It doesn't matter how little interest he has in them or anything like that, they're still not going to do it. My great uncle was a convicted killer, so obviously I had lots of conversations with him. He had the prison tattoos, full sleeves, the whole work. And here's what I know, growing up in that situation is, people have a tendency to think that these people must be awful people or, you know, terrible people and they committed this crime and they must have all these dark thoughts and stuff. And my family is weird as hell. No question about it. There's a lot of mental illness in my family. My family is also very loving and caring, and they're gonna have your back no matter what. It doesn't matter what it is. Is there the reason that I got such an interest in studying criminal behavior and things like that? Because I think it's a highly misunderstood field. And people are either on one side or the other, and I sort of walk down the center of those two fields. And I see both sides. I have no problem talking to people who are in prison or in jail. I have no problem talking to law enforcement. Both sides are just people doing what they're doing and know how to do in this life. In my family, theft from other people isn't really considered super illegal, especially if there's insurance out there that's gonna cover it or something. Their mindset is just different. It's all about getting what you need to support your family and keep your family happy. And I know that that probably sounds very odd to a lot of people out there. I grew up in this family that was very odd. Quite a lot of it didn't have running water or electricity in areas, you know, people we went to visit. My grandfather, his family were constantly in the newspaper because they were committing some crime or another, including cross-state police chases and just different things like that. Pretty well known in Oregon, and he was a very well-known moonshine runner. The whole family was. It's what they did. And my mom did her best to sort of shield us from areas of that because, again, she's a mom, and even though she had very serious mental illness issues, she also was still a mom. She still really wanted us to do well in life. She still really cares about us. She wants us to do well. She wants us to have the education and get the things we want in life. However you have to go about that was kind of the ruling thing of the day. Like I said, I walked down a bit of a center line on this whole criminal justice world thing. I see both sides of it, and I often get very irritated with TV shows because they have a lot of the facts, but they don't report them in order. So you often see things out of order on those shows. They'll say so if you look at their credits. They also will say that a lot of the experts they use are authors. In her questions she said, which shows do you watch? I love Deadliest Women. Or Deadly Women, love that show. No question about it. Even though there's a lot wrong with it, because there is. They screw around with facts a lot. in that show. But it's fascinating. I love it. I find it just fascinating. Joe Kenda, love him in Homicide Hunter. I think he's great. Older TV show that I still watch is Forensic Files. Great show, very accurate. Actually, one of the more accurate shows out there. It's more about the forensic techniques involved rather than about the crime itself. If you ever want to know my sources on almost, I think, every one of the makeup and murder videos, if you scroll down, you will see that I list the written sources. I read more than I watch videos and stuff. A lot of what I do is reading Murderpedia, and then I try to access the actual police reports and stuff, because that's where you're gonna get most of your real life information, you know, from on the spot with people who were there. I am also careful when I do these videos and I do my research. I look for first-hand experience, and I use old newspapers. People who are on the scene and see what had happened right afterwards, maybe who didn't participate in the murder but saw what happened, they're going to have the best actual information rather than people who are 2 or 3 people out from that, because it's like playing a game of telephone and facts get blurred or blown out of proportion. You go from 5 people to 20 people, especially in sensational crimes, and a lot of the ones I do tend to be more sensational, so they get blown all out of proportion. So I'm very careful about that. I think that answered her. When does fandom go too far? Here's where fandom goes too far. People in prison are very manipulative for a reason. They have very few things that they get to do, and they don't have access to things that the rest of us have. They can't go to the store for a candy bar, but they have a commissary. And most of the time, if you want to talk to somebody in prison, they're going to ask you for money to put in their commissary account. This is where people like Serial Killer Whisperer. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. When I heard about this guy, I'm in a car listening to a podcast, because we used to listen to the Darkness at the Edge of Town podcast, which is excellent, and they had True Crime Tuesdays. Loved that. They had this guy on who was talking, you know, and he was a serial killer whisperer. As I'm listening to this person, I'm just going, no, 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 stop that. Because what happens when you're a person who has no training, you're writing to somebody or you're talking to somebody on the phone who is a serial killer, you're expecting a certain thing from them. And they'll play to that. And they get off on things that me and you wouldn't get off on, but they do. Talking about a crime, if this is something that is sexually exciting to them, just talking about it is going to get them going. And things like that. And I think that is stepping over the line. I think that when you get to the point where you're in contact with these people in that way a lot, and you're not aware what background you do have is coming from books or TV, worse, without anybody there to sort of guide you through the criminal mind, you're asking for trouble, because, again, these people are very manipulative. Most people are very manipulative. I don't give a shit. But we all sort of know that, and in society we sort of have like a unwritten rule about what we will and won't do to people. In the criminal world, that rule is sort of flipped. If you are willing to give it to them, you're a sucker, and therefore what happens to you doesn't matter anymore. And the same is true for pretty much anybody in prison who's in an actual prison. County jail is totally different. Amy Slicker at Amy, how many of these shows do you watch? Like Homicide Hunter, Dateline, etc. A lot of these questions are about research, and the way I do my research, like you said, is I go through first-hand accounts only. I don't really rely so much on TV. There are a couple of YouTube channels that do a pretty good job. Instead, I tend to rely things on more like Murderpedia or Wikipedia even, although you have to be very careful and check those sources, because you can really screw up and get the facts wrong. I had one video where I spent the entire video calling Carol Ann Fugate Carly Ann Fugate, because go through and I read everything and then I create my own storyline, have you? And they're really short, they're kind of like an outline. And I just put in like the name, salient information, and then I, put the information to the crime. And if there's something I want to read, I'll put that excerpt in there. Usually those come straight from the actual court documents or something like that. I don't use investigation discovery, even though that's what runs in our house a lot. I don't use that so much. Like I said, my husband's in law enforcement. My son, he's going to school right now to become a forensic psychologist. So we have a lot of discussions about this type of thing in our house. Where most people, this is probably sort of something they watch on TV. This is something we actually talk about a lot. It is what our family is interested in. It's kind of what we do. And I know that sounds weird. I said before when I started this series, most people's tolerance for this type of thing is like down here. Mine's way up here. That's what happens when you're dealing with this stuff on a daily basis. That's why doing these to murder doesn't bother me and talking about it, because it's something we talk about over dinner. And her other question is, how do I pick my looks? I actually, on my Facebook account, I put up a poll, a couple of looks and a couple of cases. There's 2, and people vote on them, and you can also do that. If you look up Tina Maughan on Facebook and find my picture, then you can find me, and you can see my poll that I run usually like Wednesday through Friday. Originally, I had sort of a different thought of how I was going to do this, and that didn't work out. As I went through this, the looks I do have sort of evolved. So a lot of times now, the look you see has something to do with the crime itself. Either it's from the era the crime was committed in, or it's something in the region reminds me of the look. So yes, that is what happens, is people vote on it, and that is the one I do. Shout out to Amber Holster. How do you pick your cases? I get curious about something like, I look up females who killed their lovers, and then I go looking for whoever did that in like super extreme way. And it's an evolving process, so I start at one place and I get kind of a couple ideas, and then as I go, it sort of turns into an entire thing. It is not something that I like have the whole thing outlined before I start. Melissa Lee Garrett. Hey Melissa. What made you decide to incorporate your love of makeup and murder cases? Those are the 2 things that interested me the most. Those are the 2 things that I'd say have an overwhelming input in my life. I enjoy doing makeup. I think makeup's fun. That's why I started a YouTube channel about beauty. I've always kind of wanted to do, like even when I started my channel, I had this idea kicking around my head. Killers and makeup somehow would be interesting, and that's how it came out. I was really scared at first. This idea of combining murder and makeup, people get a little bit offended by it. I've had several people, Reddit, those people will tear me apart. It's not for everybody, and I understand that, and I totally understand people who are thinking this seems super disrespectful to the victims. If you know me and have watched these cases with me, if you watch the Chunk Murderess one, that one, Sammy, one of her victims, damn near killed me. I was a mess over that particular video because the victim mattered more to me than Winnie Ruth Judd. So Sammy, her victim, was the one who really spoke to me when I was doing that research. I felt incredibly bad that videos are actually based around a person who actually committed the crime rather than the victim. But most people know the criminal. They don't know the victim, so if I put up like the victim name with my makeup look, I don't think that would be any better. If they're very young victims, infant victims or children victims, I'm very careful about how I go about dealing with them. And some of them, I won't include their pictures, especially if they're current. I couldn't imagine being a mother and going through that. I try to be as respectful as I possibly can. So one of the people had asked, how long does it take to film and edit? A long time. These videos take me about 3 days to make. They are very complex, they're very long, and I'm not a professional at all, in case you didn't notice. In case there's any questions to that at all, I am not a professional at all with videoing or editing or any of that. I'd never even taken any classes. Those are the questions I had. Like I said, the research is really important to me. I try to be very careful and very cautious. Like if I know for some reason that a victim's family doesn't want information posted about them, then you're not going to see that. As a matter of fact, a couple of my cases, finding the pop-ups that I do was really hard because there just was nothing out there. The family had scrubbed the internet of all of it. I understood that, so I stopped looking for that, what I normally would put up, and went with something a little different. So if you notice the pop-ups are different than normal, that's why. It's because either I couldn't find images or the images I could find were too horrific. And I won't put up things that I think are just totally distasteful and awful. I do realize I'm doing this with makeup. I don't know, there's a line there for me that I try to be very careful not to cross over. The very first one of these with Lizzie Borden, the images are super well known. I didn't really consider that big of a deal because they're everywhere. In the case of when we were with Judd, I could find pictures that weren't everywhere, were kind of hard to find, and I didn't want to put them on my channel. Most of the time, if you're ever wanting to know what like information like that, you can find it in my description bar because I do try to add it. So yeah, all right, I think we addressed everything. So I will talk to you guys later. I hope to see this soon. Bye!